We're really lucky to be joined today by Naomi Parker, who's our first speaker. She's head of the Establishment Unit for the Centre for Climate Change Action and Agricultural Emissions, another acronym, because it's not only science people like acronyms, but obviously policy people too. So over to you, Naomi.
Thanks, Sinead. Kia ora koutou katoa. It's a pleasure to be here today to provide you with an update on the Centre for Climate Action on agricultural emissions and related investments and activities. This has been my focus for nearly 2 years now. It's been challenging, rewarding and exciting to work with my team and many people in this room to create a pathway to a real step change in addressing agricultural emissions. What I'm wanting to touch on today is I want to talk a little bit about why we need to take action. It's not really going to be new for any of you, but I think it's really important that we centre ourselves in context. I'll talk about the specific investments we're making through the Climate Emergency Response Fund, and then talk specifically about the Centre for Climate Action and some next steps. So as I said, context is important. So the first 3 points here are important, and this is often how we start these talks. Agricultural emissions make up 50% of New Zealand's gross emissions, including nitrous oxide and biogenic methane. We have targets that we need to meet to reduce biogenic methane emissions by 24 to 47%, nitrous oxide emissions to net zero. We need to enhance New Zealand's reputation as a low emissions and trusted provider of agricultural products, and we've heard a lot about that over the last 2 days. But for me, these last 2 points are the most important. Mitigating the impact of climate change on our natural environment and the well-being of communities is critical. What we've seen in the first part of 2023 is heartbreaking and like a presence in this room over the last 2 days. Climate change is the most pressing challenge facing New Zealand. We're using the word unprecedented way too often. And as Jenna Smith put it yesterday, the occasional is becoming inevitable. And right now, we do not have sufficient tools for farmers to reduce emissions, and we need to accelerate our efforts. I want to really acknowledge that this isn't new. We have been working on this for some time. The Commissioner's image this morning of funding in this area highlights this really well through the NZACCC. I'm going to give you alphabet soup here, sorry. Through the NZACCC, the GRA, the PGGRC, and wider efforts of research and industry organisations, we've made progress. But it's not enough, and there's wide agreement on that. So over the last 2 years, many in this room have contributed to shaping a different path forward. That work has led to a major budget initiative and some significant commitments to action in New Zealand's first emissions reduction plan. The Climate Emergency Response Fund announced funding of $338.7 million over 4 years to help accelerate new mitigations last year. This is the narrative that went out when that budget announcement was first made. So it talked about the new Centre for Climate Action, a new joint venture partnership between government and the private sector, uniting efforts to accelerate R&D, getting new tools, technology and practices to lower on-farm emissions to farmers faster, and very importantly, including Mātauranga Māori-based approaches to support whenua Māori owners with climate change mitigation. But I want to dig into that a little bit. Often in the science system, we will invest in one part of the pipeline, which can lead to that valley of death between fundamental R&D and actually getting things to be used and commercialised. From the $338 million, we're trying to take a much more systemic approach. Drawing on the experience and expertise of many, we've identified what we think is really needed, where we really need to invest to support change. So the new funding provides long-term funding for the New Zealand Agricultural Greenhouse Gas Research Centre. It includes government's commitment and contribution to a new joint venture with a commercial focus, and those two entities make up the Centre for Climate Action. It also includes separate dedicated funding for Māori-led innovation and Mātauranga research. That's research guided by Toiho through the NZACCC, as well as research which is taking a much more bottom-up Māori-led innovation approach that is being led out of our Māori agribusiness team within MPI. The funding also provides long-term funding for the Global Research Alliance and wider international efforts, fundamentally acknowledging that we can't do this alone in New Zealand. It provides support for building our regulatory capacity and capability. So this is capability for the Hazardous Substances and New Organisms Act, the ACVM Act, and also work through codex to establish agreements on things such as maximum residue limits. All of these things need to be in place for us to get tools in the hands of farmers. It includes support for improvements to the greenhouse gas inventory to help streamline inclusion of future mitigations and to make sure that's really effective. And dedicated funding for capability and infrastructure. We can't rely on what we've got now to make this step change. So all of these things add up to whole of system change. This investment also sits alongside a new investment into extension, so that once we have tools for farmers, we have much greater capability and capacity to drive that out and to support farmers to take that up. So those are the components that we're funding. But I really want to stress that what we are funding isn't a lot of things, it's an outcome. It's tools in the hands of farmers. It's a portfolio of initiatives to drive to that outcome. It's ambition, it's a system, and it is a moonshot. This is not easy. If it were easy, we'd have done it already. So central to this is the new Centre for Climate Action on Agricultural Emissions. The centre is designed to help hold all of this together and to make sure that all of these investments are extremely well aligned. The centre was launched last year at Field Days. It has a broad goal to accelerate the research, development and commercialisation of technology and practices to reduce emissions. Research for farmers. The last year has highlighted the demand from farmers and growers for products that will shift the dial on farm, so our sector can hit our emissions reductions targets and continue to be world leading. In terms of the value proposition for the centre, some of what we're trying to achieve is sustaining our $30 billion industry and regional communities, attracting, training and retaining critical capability, helping meet our international obligations and positioning New Zealand as a leader, providing essential R&D infrastructure, bringing critical science and commercial capability together to deliver outcomes. And I will keep coming back to this, it's a portfolio and a pipeline that will deliver tools to the hands of farmers. So I want to just touch on the two major components of the Centre for Climate Action. And Wayne will be speaking next, so he will cover lots more detail on the JV. But I want to firstly touch on the JV. So the JV is new, and the last 6 months we've been working to get that up and running. And I need to work out which slide I'm up to. 1, 2, 3. The joint venture is a 50-50 long-term partnership with industry partners listed here, investing up to $50 million a year, which we matched by government. The partners are listed, as is the board. Reflecting on some of the comments from the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment this morning, I really want to highlight one thing. This is a skills-based board. This is not government driving this work. It is setting up a group of people, a team and a board who will make smart decisions, smart commercial decisions to drive this forward. And I'll leave Wayne to talk about the rest of that. The joint venture sits alongside the NZACCC, which you all know about because that's why you're here. The NZACCC is our R&D engine. It already has a reputation for science excellence and leadership, and we now need to set up the NZACCC to be able to meet that bigger ambition, the desired scale and pace, make sure it's got the right level and model of resourcing and support it to deliver outcomes. Bringing these two components together under the umbrella of the Centre for Climate Action means we will have a strong R&D engine, a strong commercial engine working together to drive a portfolio that will have the right teams making the right decisions, taking the right risks for where they sit in the R&D pipeline and delivering outcomes for farmers faster. This is a new and exciting way of working. by working together, we can help shift the dial. And I'm very excited to see what the centre and the teams within that are going to do. Just got 2 other quick things I want to touch on. When government made the decision to set up the new Centre for Climate Action, one of the things we were really focused on is making sure that we weren't actually slowing things down while we were trying to speed them up. So you heard the Minister talk this morning about some of those early investments. So of the funding that we've been provided with, we've already committed more than 36 million into investments to help build momentum, and those are listed there. So to sum up, I just want to touch on some next steps. So as I said, we've got some work to do to set up the NZACCC for success. The next few months are also going to be really focused on working with the teams within the Centre for Climate Action to identify what are we going to go after, how do we scale up our ambition and focus on a vaccine, where are we going to go in terms of inhibitors, where do we need to focus, who do we need to partner with to really get that change happening. We're developing an infrastructure plan, a national infrastructure plan to build on the initial 6 million of investment to make sure that we've got what we need to support that R&D. And we're doing the same thing in the space of capability. We need the best minds, we need diversity of thought to really drive these outcomes. The last thing I want to touch on is reporting, monitoring, oversight and connection, which sounds really dull and it sounds like a bureaucrat's talking. The one thing I really want to mention there is we want to be incredibly transparent about how we are making progress across this whole portfolio of investment. You are going to want to know that, and you are going to want to contribute to that if you're part of this. We need to be able to see how we're tracking. We need to make sure we've got the right investments going to the right places to deliver tools into the hands of farmers. So, in closing, there's a big challenge here, and I don't think anyone in this room would disagree with that, but there's also a really huge opportunity. Climate change is one of the biggest issues facing our country. We all need to work together to get effective tools in the hands of farmers. Information about the centre and its activities will be increasingly available on our website, but also please reach out if you'd like to talk to us about what we're doing and how you might get involved. Thank you.
Thanks, Naomi. Do we have any burning questions from the floor quickly? If not, I'll go to the... Yes, looks like someone down there.
Move too soon.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Maarten Brummelaar. I'm from the Netherlands Embassy. Thank you, very informative, and maybe also for that reason, a comment, or how do you say it, a question you would expect from me. This is very interesting, also the setup, and I was wondering to what extent are you looking at international collaboration?
Yep.
Because of course some of the company partners are also having an international orientation, and the NZACCC as well. Thank you.
Absolutely, and we've been discussing that a lot across the whole centre. Wayne and Harry and I have been talking about that over the last couple of weeks. We must look internationally for partnership. We've already got arrangements with Ireland. There's an active conversation with Australia, and we've got the Global Research Alliance where we can tap into 66 different countries. This isn't something we can do it alone, and we really need to be smart about how we partner internationally, whether that's government to government or business to business or science to science.
Thanks, Naomi. I think we're going to keep moving, so